Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time there lived a king and a queen, but they had no children. This grieved them so deeply, so very deeply, that words cannot describe it. They tried everything imaginable, yet nothing seemed to work. However, one day the queen finally conceived and gave birth to a daughter. For the christening, they invited every fairy still living in the realm, so that each might bestow a gift upon the little princess. After the baptism, everyone returned to the royal palace, where a grand banquet had been prepared for the fairies. Beside each of their place settings stood a small box of pure gold, containing a golden spoon, fork, and knife, all encrusted with diamonds and rubies. Just as everyone was beginning to take their seats at the table, an old sorceress suddenly entered the hall. She had not been invited, for she had not left her tower in over 50 years, and everyone in the world had long believed her to be dead. The king ordered a place setting to be laid for her. However, there was no golden box to be found for her, like there was for the other fairies. The old sorceress felt that this slight was intended as a mockery, and she began to mutter angrily through clenched teeth. One of the young fairies seated near the old woman overheard her grumbling. Fearing that the sorceress might cast some evil spell upon the little princess, she immediately went to hide behind the curtains after the meal, resolving to be the last to speak so that she might have the opportunity to undo any harm the sorceress might inflict. Soon the fairies began to bestow their gifts upon the princess. The youngest fairy granted that she would be the most beautiful person in the world. The second, that she would be as wise as an angel. The third, that she would be gifted with every skill and talent imaginable. The fourth promised that she would dance exquisitely. The fifth, that her voice would be as sweet as a nightingale's. And the sixth, that she would play any musical instrument with great skill. When it came time for the old sorceress to speak, she shook her head, more out of malice than from old age, and declared that the princess would prick her hand on a spindle and die. At this dreadful prophecy, all the guests were struck with horror, and no one could remain seated. But then a young enchantress stepped out from behind a curtain and announced in a clear, loud voice,
"Compose yourselves, your majesties. Your daughter shall not die. It is true that I lack the power to completely undo the old sorceress's curse. The princess will indeed prick her hand on a spindle. However, she will not die from it. She will merely fall into a deep slumber that shall last for 100 years. Then a young prince will come and awaken her."
Nevertheless, despite this assurance, the king issued a royal decree strictly forbidding, under penalty of death, anyone in the kingdom from spinning or even keeping a spindle anywhere within their home. Some 15 or 16 years later, the king and queen traveled to their country castle. There, while running from room to room and climbing from one floor to the next, the princess ascended to the very top of the castle, beneath the eaves. There, in a small attic chamber, she found an old woman sitting with a spindle in her hands. This good old woman had never even heard that the king had placed a strict ban on spindles. The princess stepped closer, and the moment she took the spindle into her own hands, she pricked her finger upon it and instantly fell to the ground, unconscious. The king, realizing that it was impossible for one to escape destiny once it had been foretold by sorceresses, ordered that the princess be laid to rest in the finest chamber of the palace, upon a bed of brocade, gold, and silver. She lay there like a beautiful angel. Her eyes were closed, yet her steady breathing gave proof that she was still alive. The king decreed that the princess's slumber was not to be disturbed until the hour of her awakening had come. When this misfortune befell the princess, the good sorceress Utagis, who had saved her life by commuting her death sentence to 100 years of sleep, was residing in a distant realm. Upon hearing the news, she immediately journeyed to the castle in a fiery chariot drawn by dragons. She touched everyone living within the castle walls with her magic wand. Instantly they fell asleep, destined to awaken only when their princess did. Then the king and queen, the only ones whom the sorceress had not touched with her wand, tenderly kissed their beloved daughter, departed the castle, and issued a command that no one should dare approach her closely. Yet such a command was scarcely necessary, for within 15 minutes a dense forest of trees sprang up around the castle. It was a tangled thicket of wild roses and thorns so impenetrable that neither man nor beast could force a passage through it. The castle vanished completely behind this forest. Only the very tips of its towers remained visible, and those only from afar. 100 years later, a young prince, the reigning monarch of the kingdoms, was hunting in that very region. He caught sight of the tower tips rising above the dense forest, piquing his curiosity. Despite his inquiries, no one could tell him with any certainty what lay hidden there. The young prince did not know which rumor to believe until an old peasant approached him and said,
"Prince, long ago I heard from my father that within that castle lies a princess of indescribable beauty, that she is destined to sleep there for 100 years in a slumber from which nothing can rouse her, and that after those 100 years have passed, she will be awakened by her destined one, a young prince."
The young prince resolved to try his luck at once. As soon as he approached the forest, all the great trees, the wild roses, and the thorny thickets parted of their own accord, clearing a path for him. At last, he entered a gilded chamber and beheld, lying upon a bed, a princess of dazzling beauty. The prince approached with a sense of awe, and gazing upon her in admiration, knelt down beside her. At that very instant, the curse was broken. The princess awoke, and fixing her gentle gaze upon him, said,
"Oh, Prince, I have waited for you for so very long."
Overjoyed by these words, the prince scarcely knew how to express his delight. Though his words weren't perfect, they went straight to the princess's heart. For the fewer the flowery phrases, the truer and deeper the love. Meanwhile, everything within the palace had awakened alongside the princess. Everyone set about their tasks once more. All around there arose a bustle of sound and activity, yet the prince and princess heard none of it. They gazed into one another's eyes, unable to take their fill. Finally, the senior lady in waiting, who was just as famished as everyone else, could wait no longer and announced to the princess that breakfast was served. The prince led his betrothed into the dining hall. The princess was magnificently attired and cast admiring glances at her reflection in the mirrors. The enamored prince, of course, breathed not a word to her of the fact that the style of her gown had gone out of fashion at least 100 years ago. Yet, even in an old-fashioned dress, she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Without hesitation, the prince and princess were wed and lived out their lives in love and prosperity.
Please subscribe to the Magic Stories channel. Like the video and click the bell.